What's going on, guys? Zuko back with another War Within video. Hope you're all doing very well. We're back on the PTR. I'm on Ele Shaman. There's just been some builds that I've been exploring on Ele Shaman on the PTR. As you guys are probably aware at this point, there is another kind of sweeping talent change coming for Ele Shaman in 11.0.5, which is now only a couple of weeks away. There's been a Wowhead article that just announced that the anniversary event is coming just a couple of weeks from now, which is really, really cool. So what's happening for Ele Shaman? There's a big change coming here. And it's been something that, like, Ele Shaman's already had a lot of changes. They've had a whole talent tree rework, essentially, when they brought in things like Ice Fury and Fusion of the Elements, and they moved stuff around, like Liquid Magma Totems down here, but they've done another change. Some of it is really good. I'm going to go over the changes, and then I'm going to go over what this potential build is. The big changes are that Stormkeeper's moved up here. The cooldown reduction from Flash of Lightning is gone. This is something I covered in a previous video, but I want to emphasize this again. The cooldown reduction is gone. You don't cool down Primordial Wave. You don't cool down Ancestral Swiftness if you're doing a Farseer build. You don't cool down any of your defensives anymore. You don't cool down your kick anymore, which was really, really strong in my opinion. You don't cool down, you know, your Storm Elemental or Storm Keeper, anything. Nothing gets cooled down anymore. So your cooldowns are now your cooldowns, and they are going to function like other specs cooldowns in a very similar way. That you don't have this massive cooldown reduction on everything anymore. You're going to have to be a little bit more deliberate about when you use your cooldowns, when you time things, right? So that you get the maximum value out of them, especially something like Storm Elemental. Right now, we're used to having Storm Elemental up like permanently, which means we have permanent increased speed when we're casting Lightning Bolt or Chain Lightning. So that's the biggest change for sure, is that Flash of Lightning doesn't have cooldown reduction anymore. Another big change that I talked about in another video is that Ascendance is now becoming an overload cooldown, not just a fire cooldown. It procs off of your spenders, your not if you're taking Deeply Rooted, for example. Sorry, it procs off your spenders. It doesn't proc off Lava Burst anymore, so that's really interesting as well. Ascendance itself, when you get into Ascendance, it gives you guaranteed overloads and overload damage, which is very strong for any build, which is kind of cool. It gives us some flexibility now, and you can basically say, hey, even if I'm doing a lightning based build, Ascendance used to be only like a fire thing, I can now use Ascendance in my lightning build because I'm going to be overloading a lot, and that's going to be a lot of extra damage. This has also put some speculation into whether or not Mastery is going to become another really big stat. And I do think that there's talents like Echo Chamber, which are going to buff the Mastery by quite a bit, more than it is on live right now. There is potentially an argument here to be made. What I want to say is, I'm continuing to do testing right now. My preliminary testing on the PTR, just on the dummies, is showing me that the fire build, a fire-based build, is still very bad damage-wise compared to a lightning-based build. And the Farseer build has now gotten worse, just objectively, because Primordial Wave and Ancestral Swiftness are no longer cooled down by Flash of Lightning. That was a massive reason why the Farseer build was even close in damage to the Stormbringer build, was because of that cooldown reduction that you got. That's gone. So I think, just like from a numbers perspective, objectively speaking, Stormbringer is going to be the way. And I'm going to show you now what the current Stormbringer Tempest build is going to kind of look like in 11.05, in my opinion. I've kind of cooked up a talent tree here that I think you're going to want to look at. And it really centers around Aftershock. And this is something that, like, I think is going to become a massive, massive deal. And I'll tell you why. Deeply Rooted, now, obviously, it's going to trigger Ascendance, but it triggers from your spenders, from spending Maelstrom, Earthshock, Ele Blast, Earthquake. The more spenders that you can use, the quicker you will proc Deeply Rooted. If you're procking Deeply Rooted, you're buffing your overloads, and you can overload a lot. You're going to get a guaranteed overload, right? While you're Ascended, elemental overload damage is increased by 150%, and spells affected by overload cause one additional overload. Your spells that can overload are, of course, Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning, Lava Burst, and then you can take Mountains Will Fall, and that'll make Earthshock and Earthquake also have a chance to overload for the same amount. It's the same chance, but it's a 50% effectiveness on their overload. But if you proc Deeply Rooted, or if you take Ascendance, whenever you get an overload, you're going to get another one. You're guaranteed to always get another overload, basically. You don't even actually have to trigger an overload. You're just guaranteed to get at least one additional overload when you're in Deeply Rooted. So the reason that I think Aftershock works so well is because when you get a proc on your Earthquake or your Earthshock, you can cast it again. Then you can cast it again and cast it again, and you have a higher chance of getting Deeply Rooted to trigger, and when that does, you're doing big overload damage. That's kind of how this works now, okay? You're still going to take Storm Elemental. Again, I've really tried Fire Elemental. It's just completely trash compared to Storm Elemental. Even though Storm Elemental is changing, while Storm Elemental is active, your Chain Lightning, Lightning Bolt, or Tempest increase your haste by up to 16%. It's no longer just cast speed on Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning. It's stacking 16% more haste, which affects everything. It affects how quickly you cast Lava Burst. It affects how quickly you cast Elemental Blast if you're going to play Elemental Blast, right? So there's additional synergy there with the rest of the kit as opposed to just Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning, which again, I think makes Storm Elemental even more valuable than Fire Elemental. All the testing that I've done here, I've tried Fire Elemental, I've tried working in talents like Erupting Lava, which is basically replacing Sky Fury's Demise, which is going, by the way. Sky Fury is gone. You don't get the crit for Flame Shock anymore, but you do get 50% more damage on Flame Shock and a longer duration, which is really cool. You can combine that with the Fire Elemental and get your Flame Shocks ticking faster, and then they last longer and they do more damage. It's like, it sounds cool in principle. It just doesn't produce enough damage. In my testing, it just doesn't produce enough damage. Here's the build that I think you're going to want to run. The cooldown reduction that we still do get is right here, Herald of the Storms. Casting Lightning Bolt, Tempest, or Chain Lightning reduces the cooldown of Stormkeeper. So you do get massive cooldown reduction on Stormkeeper. It's actually more cooldown reduction than we have now on Stormkeeper specifically. You don't get cooldown reduction on Storm Ellie. You don't get cooldown reduction on anything else, but you can maintain a better CDR actually on Stormkeeper, which is really important because Stormkeeper can overload, right? Chain Lightning is instant and overloads on every target. You can combine that with a Deeply Rooted proc, and boom, you've got some really big overloads that are doing a lot of extra damage. The final piece of this puzzle that we're going to talk about is, of course, the Lightning Rod stuff. And there's two talents here that make Lightning Rod. This talent here, Charge Conduit, makes Lightning Rod last 4 seconds longer and do more damage. What you're going to notice in the details breakdown is that Lightning Rod ends up becoming a significant portion of your damage as opposed to what it is on live right now. It's like a decent amount of damage on live, but if your Chain Lightning is doing 30% of your damage, your Lightning Rod will do like 8% of your damage, or 9, maybe 10%. And now Lightning Rod is like almost equal to Chain Lightning because it lasts longer and it does more damage, but it's the duration that really kicks it in. Because if we're getting Aftershock procs on our Earthquakes around and around and around, we have basically permanent uptime on our Lightning Rods, and you're going to see that when I do this test here. And it's going to make it so that your Chain Lightning is always triggering Lightning Rod damage, and it's like never ever falls off. That's what it's going to feel like in the key. And I think that this is a build I think you could cook up that's going to basically be the exact same build you're running right now on the live servers. This is kind of where it's going to go to. We're going to pop Bloodlust, and we're going to go really crazy here. My haste is only 20% with a flask. My crit is 9%. Bear this in mind. I'm 606 item level. This is kind of the best gear that I could scrap together on the PTR. So our gear right now on the live server is much better than this. But just keep that in mind, okay? I'm not taking Ascendance because I don't think it's actually worth the talent point. We're kind of stretched thin on talent points down here, and I think that I want all these other talent points more than I want Ascendance. I want Deeply Rooted because I want the occasional Ascendance proc, but I don't care for the actual cooldown, okay? I'd have to invest 2 talent points to make it into a 2-minute cooldown, and that's just not worth it in my opinion. Okay, here we go. We're going to go Stormkeeper into our Ellie, and then we're going to start blasting. Actually, I'm going to hold my Ellie now for a second. I'm going to get my Primordial Wave stuff set up first, and then I'm going to do my Ellie, okay? Here we go. Stormkeeper, we'll go Bloodlust. We'll do a Primordial Wave. Primordial Wave always gives you Lava Surge, by the way. Okay, first Earthquake. Didn't get an Aftershock proc. That's okay. Second Earthquake. There's a Tempest. Okay, we're gonna go. Now we got 4 lightning. There's an Ascendance proc right there. Boom. Now I just press Chain Lightning inside my Ascendance proc, and it's overloading. It's guaranteed to overload. Did you see that? There's 3 Earthquakes down. Here's another Tempest. I've had Lightning Rods out this entire time. There's another Earthquake right there. We didn't get an Aftershock proc. That's okay. Our Stormkeeper's already back, by the way. That's how quick it comes back. Okay, another Primordial Wave window. Boom. Earthquake. Earthquake. Chain Lightning. Chain Lightning. Tempest. And then we'll do another Earthquake. Got a proc on Earthquake. There's an Aftershock proc. We've actually had a couple right now. I didn't say that. There's Tempest. I'm kind of tab targeting around to try and make sure that I'm getting enough of my lightning rods out. In a bigger AoE pack, you're going to actually get more lightning rods than you have right now. Our haste is falling off, so we're really low on damage. Our damage is really good, though. Stormkeeper's back again. Whoa, that's pretty quick, right? Kind of insane, right? Stormkeeper again. Earthquake. Earthquake. Chain Lightning. Chain Lightning. Another Earthquake. We got a proc. Another Earthquake. Okay. Chain Lightning. Let's do a Tempest. Okay. You can see how this kind of works. Earthquake. We're going to get a DRE proc here in a minute, I promise. Because we're casting so many Earthquakes. This is where Aftershock really works well with the build, in my opinion, where you're getting these procs on Earthquake, and it's going to trigger a Deeply Rooted for you. And that's going to increase your overload damage significantly, and it's going to feel really, really good when you do that. Here comes an Earthquake. Stormkeeper's back again. We'll do Stormkeeper into Earthquake. Got an Earthquake proc. There's another one. Okay. Here we go. We'll do a Tempest here. Here's another Earthquake. And Deeply Rooted still works the same way that it always did, where it will stack up over time. There we go. Proc right there. Tempest is going to overload. That's a guaranteed overload on Tempest right there. Okay. So I think that Aftershock is just going to gain a tremendous amount of value because our Deeply Rooted procs come from casting Spenders now. You have to actually cast Spenders. And that just means that you want to be casting as many Spenders as possible. That's where Aftershock comes into play. And I think that this is going to look and feel so much better when you actually have a certain amount of haste, right? When I have way better stats on live. If I have more crit, if I have more haste, this damage goes through the roof, guys. Look at Lightning Rod. It was my top damage on that fight. My top damage was Lightning Rod. That's insane. Why? Because we had permanent uptime on it. That's why. My Lightning Rod was 96% uptime on that fight, right? That's a static fight. Things aren't, there's not like other crap going on. But my point is, this is going to become a really significant portion of your damage. With the lightning build that you have right now, you're going to carry that into the new 11.0.5. It's just going to get really important that you have those lightning rods out, that you're tab targeting around. Again, I know that they have the AI of how lightning rod kind of works, but sometimes it's inconsistent. So I would recommend tab targeting around those Earthquakes to get a lightning rod. They're going to be up all the time with this build. And from what I've seen on my testing, this build produces the most amount of damage, like by far. I've tried a Farseer build with Stormbringer, I tried a Farseer build with the lightning stuff. I've tried a Farseer fire build. I've tried a lot. I've even tried a Stormbringer fire build. It was really dumb. Don't even ask me about that. But the point is, you can combine Aftershock, getting procs on your Spenders. That's going to go really well with Deeply Rooted, which is going to proc off of your Spenders. When Deeply Rooted procs, don't think fire anymore. It's not just fire, fire, fire. It's overloads, and you can have a Stormkeeper ready to go for when the Deeply Rooted procs potentially, and you can get Omega overloads, which is really, really cool. There is an argument to be made for Surge of Power as well. You could get a Deeply Rooted proc, and then if you have Surge of Power, I think that you could get some crazy overloads there. I think that you might want to combine, if you're going to take Surge of Power, I think you combine it with the actual Ascendance cooldown. That would be a much better pairing, because then you can proc Ascendance, and then you can guarantee that your Lightning Bolt or your Tempest will cause 2 additional elemental overloads. That means you're going to use like Earthshock into Tempest. It's guaranteed to overload at least once from Ascendance. Then it's going to overload 2 additional times. That's 3 overloads on 1 Tempest. It would just be like, you would literally become Palpatine, right? Like, it's kind of insane. So maybe in like a single target version of this build, you could take Surge of Power with the actual Ascendance cooldown and Deeply Rooted. I don't know. We'll have to figure that out in the future. But in terms of Mythic Plus AoE lightning builds, I think that Aftershock's going to pair very well with Deeply Rooted. And it's something that I take already, and I'm doing lots of damage on it already. So I'm very excited about this build and the potential for Elemental Shaman in the future. If you're really worried about Elemental Shaman in 11.0.5, let me just say to you, it's going to be fine. I promise you. There will be a good, strong Elemental Stormbringer build going into the patch. I do not know about Farseer. I think Farseer, from what I can see right now, is going to be dead on arrival in 11.0.5 because you don't get cooldown reduction anymore on Ancestral Swiftness and on Primordial Wave. That was just like, it's such a key component to making that build work. So I'm a little scared for Farseer, but the Tempest build is perfectly fine for Ele Shaman. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below about all the changes that are coming. Remember, this is happening in a couple of weeks now, basically 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to be getting the it's actually in late October. We're going to be getting the announcement, and we're going to be getting the anniversary event, and all these changes are going to be coming in. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thanks so much again for watching. I love you all. I'll see you in the next one.